Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Blah, da, 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 ba, da, ba, ba. And now,
that was a snazzy song.
And now,
I think we're live.
We are live. In fact, okay, now we're delayed. So now I'm singing my little song on a live stream.
Nice. I'm trying to see if I see it show up on our channel. Can we see the comments, by the way? How do we do that?
I can see the comments right here as long as I don't look at you.
Oh, you can probably just minimize it.
No, I either need to be on Safari or I need to be on Zoom.
I see what you're saying.
So I'm sacrificing seeing your face in real time, and instead I'm just seeing your delayed face.
Yay! I see what you're saying. I'm trying to see if I can
saying, hey.
See the video. So I can see the comments.
No, mute whatever video you're watching. That should help.
I got it. Okay.
Oh, everyone's just saying hello. Hello, Makeup by Christy. Hello, Paloma. Hello, Candy Sparkles. Hello, Piggy Love, Rose Kelly, Rahima Zabi. Hypersensitive Subs and Taylor Wright. Hello, England. Yeah, this is our first time trying out a good old Zoom Q&A. Now that we're in quarantine, we still want to give you guys some content, and we were probably due for a Q&A. And so, yeah, feel free to ask your Qs and we will share our As. I know that Shaina posted something on our Instagram that had some Qs that we can A as well.
Yeah, let me see. A lot of people asked about the Venus retrograde coming up.
Yes, I've been actively ignoring that.
See, I think it's absolutely so on par with what's going on, because it's like that Venus retrograde energy. We're all so wanting to get out and socialize, but we're just stuck at home. So we're all just being thinking of who we could be hanging out with and probably being upset at who we are or something like that.
Yeah, as well as when Venus is in retrograde, they say that whatever your relationship, if it's meant to last, it's going to last through the Venus retrograde. And if it's not meant to last, it's going to fall apart during the Venus retrograde. And I know that with quarantine and everything, people are maybe moving in together when they're not ready to move in together. And so relationship issues are bound to show up. And it's just, like Shaina said, very much on par with what's going on in the world now.
It's going retrograde in Gemini. That's happening in May. It starts May, I have it written down, May 13th, but it's currently in its pre-shadow period or whatever that's called. So basically all the stuff that's gonna come, basically we're in the period where we're setting up all the stuff to be knocked down during the retrograde period. So, this is the kind of what the issues that you're feeling or that are showing up or that you think might be showing up are going to really show themselves during the period and probably be a lot harder to ignore. And I think that has just so much to do with the fact that we're at home with these people, not everybody, but, it's just more unignorable. Or if you're not home with them, then it shows what relationships will last throughout not having contact with each other.
Yeah, and somebody asked about natal Venus retrograde, and what I use to kind of analyze retrograde planets is I use 3 criteria. It's an energy that is either or turned inward, behaves atypically, or doesn't know how to express itself properly. So with Venus retrograde, it also depends a lot on the sign that it's in, how it's going to behave. But if you look at Venus retrograde turned inwardly, that could be someone who emphasizes relationships and Venus themes perhaps even to like an unhealthy level, an obsession, an all-consuming kind of level. Atypically could be someone who doesn't express Venus values in the way that Venus likes to be expressed, someone who isn't really comfortable with their own value, someone who isn't really comfortable with expressing love. And then of course, Venus expressing itself, not being able to express itself properly is just maybe in combination of that feeling of having Venus be something so important, having relationships be so important, having romantic feelings be so important, but in combination with 3, it not expressing itself properly, not being able to, share all that love that you feel in your heart, or what your values are, or how you feel about someone. So that's kind of like my criteria that I use for any retrograde planet natally.
Yeah. Someone said my Venus return is wasted indoors, and I've been feeling that way about certain transits. I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna go through this good transit one time a year, one time whenever indoors, man. It's silly, but somebody said tips for guessing a rising sign if like somebody doesn't know their birth time. I feel like I've gotten a system down for this. I like crazy, do it all the time. But I think a lot of it also you have to think about not just the person's rising sign, but what those 4 angular houses will probably be. Obviously, because of interceptions, the 4th and the 10th could be a little bit different, but just taking all that stuff into consideration, especially if the person's rising that you're trying to figure out is like somebody that you know, like a famous person or somebody you know online, then that really comes into play. And then their 4th house is also super important, because I was really bad at guessing like Leo risings for a long time until I realized that most of them have their 4th house in Scorpio. And for some reason, once that ticked, I was like, that's this flavor. Anyways, and also just the general like features of their literal face and how they dress, and how the planets might fall in their houses. Like, oh, this person seems like they have 8th house energy. What could that be?
Yeah, and a lot of times just like how someone behaves, and in guessing rising signs, you kind of need to take into account the nuance of what the rising sign means. Like Leo rising is a really good example, because Leos have this really clear archetype of being the blonde cheerleader who gets everything she wants, as the homecoming queen and all of that. But like what I have realized with Leo risings is that they, more than anything, more than being any kind of archetype in that way, they just don't care what other people think of them, and they are authentically expressing themselves 100% of the time. So they can be like weird, they can be like antisocial even, but antisocial in that way of like, well, I don't really care that I'm being antisocial, I'm just going to be the way that I'm going to be and express myself in a way that's true to me and not really care about what you think.
Yeah, there was somebody that I met, like, with some coworker that I first saw one time, and I knew she was a Cancer for some reason pretty early on, but I was dead set on the fact that she was a Scorpio rising or a Cancer rising, and I found out she was a Leo rising, and I was like, this can't be right. And this was years ago. I was like, fuck astrology, no way. And then I look back at it and I was like, Leo risings really just do also reflect their sun so much. And when I met her, I instantly got so many hits of Cancer, and it's because you have to think about the Leo reflecting the sun. And so if you see somebody and you're like, they're coming across super as their sun sign, I really see their sun sign, they probably either have sun in the first or are a Leo rising. Yeah.
Somebody asked a really interesting question about feminine hygiene, or like feminine issues in your body, and where that could be expressed in the birth chart, like heavy menstrual periods, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that is a case of the moon. The moon rules the what's it called, reproductive organs. So if you're having an issue with your moon, or if your moon is really strong, it will show up in how your reproductive organs react, as well as your maternal nature and all that kind of stuff, and that sort of becomes linked.
Yeah.
So, sorry, you're gonna say something.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if I was interrupting you. I have dealt with major, like, I guess, like, feminine issues my whole life, just like since I was like 7 and really young. And so I spent a lot of time like looking at my chart, trying to figure out where all that stuff is always coming from. And I have a few theories. I completely agree that like the moon is definitely the biggest one, especially with the menstrual cycle. But with some other stuff, I think this is super specific, but I have my Chiron in Scorpio. I think Chiron in Scorpio can do that. And also because mine is intercepted, I have, this might be too personal, but like I have low estrogen and low testosterone. I don't know how you have both, but I have low both. And I think that that interception of the Chiron in Scorpio really points to that. And then also something, I think also looking at your Venus and your Mars health, especially if they make contact with each other. If the contact is especially negative, I think that because that then results in a lot of either gender or sexuality issues, I think that it can manifest as genital issues, or feminine or masculine for males or females. I think that can result in that too.
Mm-hmm. People are, or someone is asking, how do you think what's happening now will affect newborn babies' birth charts? Do you think it'll create a lot more 12th house energy?
Thinking about that.
And I mean, when you're looking at generations, obviously you want to look at the generational energy, the generational planets, the generational aspects that they're making, and that's going to be what connects babies or generations of people astrologically. So, I mean, Saturn is moving into Aquarius by the end of the year, by the end of, if babies are being born, like, or if babies are being made now, I don't think they'll have like this whole entire Capricorn stellium conjunct each other. But maybe babies that aren't being made now, but babies that are, how do I phrase this sentence? Babies that are in wombs at the time of the quarantine.
Right. I see what you're saying. Going through pregnancy right now.
We're going to have this Jupiter conjunct Pluto, this all this Capricorn restrictive energy and heavy energy.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, because I was like, dang, we're gonna have like all the children that are being born are carrying, as Nina said, this heavy energy. And something that also ties into that, my mom was telling me, and this started a while ago, she was watching something on the news, and the people that are having their kids right now, they can't be forced to do this, but they are being strongly encouraged to let the baby stay in the hospital for 2 weeks. And so they wouldn't be seeing so you know that the first 2 weeks of that baby's life, they wouldn't have like any mother or father bonding. And I think that points so much to all these babies being born with all that heavy Capricorn energy. And also, this might be a little bit off topic, but I was watching the Unabomber documentary, and they mentioned how he got really sick as a kid and he had to be put in the hospital for a few weeks, and they again didn't allow the parents to visit except for like 2 hours for 1 week or something. And then when they got him back, he became like super unemotional, unresponsive, stopped smiling, stopped making eye contact, and like that really changed his demeanor, and it was very obvious. So I think that just shows a lot of, I don't know, similarities to the energies that are right now that I feel like a lot of the children will unfortunately be going through.
Yeah.
Not, anyway. It's a fun question.
I thought you guys lived together. We do not. We never have, actually.
No,
we lived in the same building for like 1.5 years. And even when we first moved to LA, we lived in the same, what would you call that, gated community?
Yeah.
For 6 weeks, maybe. But no, we don't live together.
Somebody asked, how important is the progress chart? And I think that's like an odd phrase because it's not about like, they're different charts. They all have their own purpose. But I do think that I will say I have been paying a lot more attention to my progress chart and people's progress charts than I normally have recently, just because I do think that there is a lot of validity to it, just speaking to at that moment, you know, and I've just found a lot I can, especially the progressed moon, like the aspects your progressed moon make really determine how your time is going. I don't know, and that might just because I'm a Cancer rising, so I feel ruled by the moon, but it's very valid to me at least.
Yeah, well, in comparison to the natal chart and the progress chart, they just show different things.
Yeah.
So how important one is over the other depends on what you find more important, and also how important your progress chart is also depends on what's going on in your progress chart, how old you are, how different it is from your natal chart. Your natal chart is always accurate, and your natal chart is really important for you to look at and understand if you're looking to look at and understand yourself and who you are at your core. But if you want to understand what you're going through at the moment, how you're progressing as a person, what lessons you're learning in this period of your life, then you want to look at the progress chart. And the older you are, the more relevant your progress chart becomes, because the more different it becomes from your natal chart. And the progressed moon is always really interesting to look at because it's the fastest changing planet in the progressed chart. It changes about every 2.5, 3 years. So yeah. What do you guys think of Vedic astrology? This is a hot topic. We're always being asked. And lots of input from other people of whether we're doing the right astrology or whether we're doing the wrong astrology.
The fact that there is a right and a wrong astrology.
Yeah, there's really Vedic astrology and fucking what the fuck do we do?
Western tropical astrology.
Well, I should say sidereal astrology and tropical astrology were once the same. So they to me show different things, describe different things. Vedic astrology is a different way of looking at the birth chart, and we have our own take on how we like to do astrology, how we like to look at the birth chart. We aren't even astrologers who share very much about transits or stuff like that. I mean, we do have a transit reading, but in terms of like world events being affected by transits, we don't even do that a lot. We're very interested in people, and that's the lens through which we look at the birth chart. And that's why Western tropical astrology fits with us, why we like it, why we follow it. But that is not saying that we invalidate sidereal astrology or Vedic astrology. It's always important to know that you don't know anything. You don't know everything. And the only thing that you could possibly know is that you know nothing. So
I think it's really just, to maybe say this, it's just what you connect to. Like, if I sometimes will be like, I feel like watching a Vedic placement, a video about my Vedic placement, and I watch it, and sometimes it just doesn't click. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it's just that way. It just doesn't click with me as if I go and watch a video from like a Western tropical astrologer that I like. It just makes more sense to me. So really, it's just like, what can you add up? What resonates with you? What do you want to learn? And I don't know. What are you looking to get out of astrology, I guess?
Yeah, I don't really look into a lot of Vedic astrology, except that I find Vedic astrology compatibility a bajillion times more straightforward than all the different charts you have to look at in compatibility for Western astrology. And for that reason, it's really interesting to look at Vedic compatibility, because you get a score, you get to see like different areas, and I find it to be very accurate. So that's my hot take.
Somebody said, aren't you guys 7th house heavy? That would make sense, how you guys like to relate to people more on one-on-one instead of world events. Do you think it's very true?
It's very true.
What do you think about sign compatibility? How detrimental is it being with somebody who is incompatible with you? We got a whole If you want to do.
Okay, so sign compatibility. What does that mean? You know, sun
Yeah.
sign compatibility, all that stuff. Compatibility and synastry are so nuanced. So many things go into it. And it's really hard to say like whether, I mean, it's not hard to say whether someone is incompatible or compatible, but you really need to look at all of the details. And if you're looking at any synastry chart, if you're looking at the compatibility between any two people, you're not going to find a perfectly compatible synastry chart.
There's
Or
no such thing, because if it's all perfectly compatible, then that's almost negative, because then there's no challenge or growth there.
and also like everyone has malefic planets, so
Yeah.
malefic planets have to fall, like
Mhm.
you're going to have someone's malefic planets fall into certain houses, and obviously there are ones that are more favorable than other, like Saturn obviously is a malefic planet. You'd rather have that in the seventh house because that's, you know, emphasizing the longevity or the seriousness that someone brings into a relationship. And so compatibility, looking at astrology and not looking at astrology, and relationships, looking at astrology and not looking at astrology, are very complicated and nuanced.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there's like so much that you need to read into to truly understand. And I think I would question, what do you mean by saying how detrimental is it to be with someone who is incompatible? Like, I would want to hear specifics of what you think incompatible is, or what you see in your chart that is incompatible. If you mean sun sign, then that basically doesn't tell you anything about whether someone is incompatible. Like, my cousin is an Aquarius and she's married to a Scorpio, and that is two suns squaring. So you would say that's not compatible. That could be detrimental even. But she's a Taurus rising, so his sun falls into her seventh house.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just a really basic way of saying how like sun sign compatibility is not everything. You have to look at so much.
Yeah, especially because if you're just looking like, oh, if it do me a Sagittarius and my boy a Gemini, are we compatible? And if you just look at and you read the compatibility of those signs, it's going to say different things everywhere. And also because of degrees, you might not actually be making an aspect like the generalized compatibility will be speaking of, you know? So just because it says like, oh, you and your hubby things sign is in a good aspect and they just go so flowing well, they might actually not. They could, instead of being in a trine, they could be in a square. And also everything else goes into play. But that's why it's so important not to just go, what are these two people's sun signs and do they work well together? Or just to like think that you're doomed because they don't or something, you know?
Yeah, I would look most importantly into like Juno aspects. Like that's something that I mean, if you're looking for, you know, I'm a seventh house Venus, so I'm like, I'm looking for merge. You know, and what's the point if it's not going in that direction? But you know, it's so nuanced.
Somebody said, I think this is a cute question. Which celebrity would you love to do a chart reading for? Which would be most intriguing?
So I am a big YouTube fan. I watch a lot of YouTube. And when I think of like people that I want to read their charts for, it's people who are like into tarot and spirituality and sort of into astrology, but they don't even know yet completely how much it is. So I'm a big fan of Kaylin Nicholson. And I even DM'd her on Instagram saying like, I will give you a free birth chart reading.
Oh, that's so cute.
Because I would love to read her birth chart, and she shares a little bit about herself, and she uses CoStar, which is, we don't fuck with CoStar because CoStar doesn't really give you your real chart, or it doesn't give you your full chart really. So I want to read Kayla Nicholson's chart for her.
I always think about this, like not like as an actual question, but like how much there's so many, mostly musicians that I want to like read their charts, and like just so much that I've analyzed about them just from like being creepy and like stalking them or something. But I think my number one would be Princess Nokia, and I always think about her because it's the same thing as what Nina said, where it's like they know a little bit and they're already open kind of to those subjects, but you're like, I want to explain all of this stuff that you think is just coming from this, but in reality it's coming from this and this and this and this. And I think that she'd just be an amazing person to sit down and talk to. I think that I don't know, probably she has a very interesting life story. And it's always like whenever you have to do somebody's chart reading, especially like person to person, they'll usually be willing to share stories. And I bet you she has a lot of really good stories. So yeah, probably her.
I am lost in the chat, but I saw a question a little while ago saying, have you ever doubted astrology?
Oh,
And I think that's an interesting question. If you want to answer first, Shaina.
well, I think initially I didn't have any opinion on it for most of my life. I was never like, I always just was like, I was telling you, I was like, I looked up Capricorn and I was like, you know what, that sounds right. And that was kind of like the end of my search. Like, and I never really knew anything. And I definitely did it first because I'm going to doubt everything at first for a very long time. And I definitely think that I don't know if I doubt astrology anymore because I have a different view on it than that, if that makes sense now. That it almost is like something that I feel like I can't doubt because I don't know how to explain it, but like I definitely used to a lot. And I still can sometimes feel like I need to challenge it, but never because I'm like never because I'm really doubting it, just because I like to test it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've had fleeting moments of like, is this stuff even real? Is this
Yeah.
still confirmation bias? But
For sure, yeah, confirmation bias comes up a lot, yeah.
a lot of people will bring that up and a lot of people want to challenge it, but like at the end of the day, it just proved itself to me over and over and over again. And like I said, like I don't know anything
Exactly, yeah.
in the world, but I fuck with this, and so I don't really doubt it. And I even like came to the conclusion of when people were saying like, what if it's just confirmation bias and blah blah blah. It's like, so what if it is? It's helping.
Yeah.
It's helping.
Yeah, that is so true.
But I still don't think that it's confirmation bias.
But I agree with what I see. Yes. Words. Let me see. Do you know any celebrities you have a similar chart to, Nina? Have we already answered this question?
That was part of our astrology tag, actually.
Oh, I thought we did. Okay.
And I remember my answer back then, but I didn't have like this person's birth time, and I only assumed her rising, which is Ingrid Nilsson. But I don't know now if I have any confirmed celebrities that I have a similar chart to. This is a fun fact. I went to a Steiner school, for people who don't know, and Jennifer Aniston went to a Steiner school, and we're both Aquariuses with Sagittarius moons.
This person said, if you could have, I don't have an answer, sorry. If you could have one placement that the other person has, which would you choose? But our charts are really similar. If you could have one placement that the other person has, which would you choose?
Something that you have, Shane? Like if I had something that you had?
Yeah, like what's, like, is there, but I feel like it's just silly because it's
so really similar charts. So you don't have an answer? You
no.
What?
I don't know. I just thought it was a good question. I figured I usually ask the question and then I'll let you answer it and I'll think about it if I have an answer.
Let me try and think of your chart if I want anything that you have. I mean, I love myself, so.
I feel like you need to do that with somebody that has just such a different chart to you. You know? I don't know. Oh, I like your part of fortune in Taurus.
Yeah, if I were you, I would choose that.
Yeah.
I kind of, you have your, what degree are your north and south node at?
1.
Okay, never mind. Because if they were at 0 degrees, then I'd be like, oh shit. Those are the same points. But
At like 1.40 because it's like 0.01
so
different.
we're both 1 degree away from the same points in our north and south node.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Let me see.
Maybe, I don't know. Your chart is so similar to mine.
Yeah, and I feel like my chart just takes like anything that's like harmonious in yours and makes it in disharmonious.
Like my instinct is to say you're Venus in Sagittarius because Venus in Aquarius is not as good as Venus in Sagittarius, but then I take away like that would take away so much of who I am.
Yeah.
Venus is so aspected
Yeah.
and in an angular house. So I'm gonna have to pass on all of your placements.
Somebody said, "Are y'all social distancing?" Yes. We are. Duh. Any question you've seen in the chat?
I got super lost in the chat and now I'm trying to find my way. Okay. Okay, I'm back at where I was before.
Somebody said, I'm gonna kind of rephrase it. It's phrased a little weird, but do you think the moon or Venus make more of an impact on the relationship, or like more important to the success, I guess, of the relationship?
Incompatibility?
Yeah.
It depends on the nature of the moon and Venus in synastry.
Yeah, I would have to say that I think if you just focus too much on a positive Venus compatibility, then you might find it's a little shallow over times and it's not as emotionally satisfying, but your kind of wants are satisfied. And I don't know, I think a rule of thumb is that like the moon kind of always beats out.
Yeah, well, we're Cancer rising, so we really think that the moon is probably the most important thing in the world.
For sure, definite bias, and I will always admit it.
But you also need to like see what is the moon doing in the synastry chart, what is Venus doing in the synastry chart, you know, and that will show you what is more important. But the moon speaks more to who you are. So better compatibility with the moon will speak to better compatibility with each other as a person. That doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship will last romantically forever, but it will have a really good basis of these two people getting along for a really long time.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. It's like, a solid moon isn't necessarily going to be romantic or sexual if you have that solid moon connection. So it might be that that has so much to do with what you look for. And I'm always going to say moon because I'm always going to look for the friendship, I guess, to last over anything. And I feel like that's what the moon relationship would do. But especially if you're somebody that's heavy Venus ruled, or just makes a strong impact on your chart, if you're not getting what you want, then you're not going to be satisfied, you know?
This is a funny question. Don't judge me for this question, but because we're all out here struggling in COVID economy, I was curious to know if someone's natal chart can indicate success in finding a sugar daddy. The short answer is yes. But we had a client that we told her, oh, you're destined to be a sugar baby.
Yeah, I was like, is that the same person? Because I think that we got somebody asking about how to be a sugar daddy in the questions as well, or how to get a sugar daddy or something like that during COVID-19.
We don't have like practical real world advice on how to get a sugar daddy. We have never tried and therefore have never been successful at doing that. But there are things in a birth chart where you will be like, oh yeah, you're kind of like destined to be a sugar baby. And that is like Cancer energy, like Cancer rising low-key, because then your 7th house is in Capricorn.
Yeah, for sure. Or Saturn in the 7th house in general.
Yes, Capricorn Venus too is looking for that.
I think that just all the water risings, because they give off so much more of like they can give off like the I'm baby energy, wanting to be nurtured, wanting to be taken care of. They have earth energy in their 7th house. They can be definite, like wanting to be just taken care of in that way, especially the sugar daddy or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I was going to say something else. Look at your North Node in terms of like you're destined to be a sugar baby.
Or what I've noticed is, I think it was like Anna Nicole Smith. She had a bunch of shit in her 11th house, but then no planets in her 10th house. And I think that's why I think that's that mentality of like fame and success, but you don't give a shit to get the recognition of it because you don't have anything in your 10th house needing to be like, I'm famous for this. Anna Nicole Smith is just like, I just want the 11th house to be satisfied. I think that could be an indication of the kind of sugar daddy, sugar baby thing, or just that mentality in general.
Yeah, because it's success based off of the people that you know rather than
and the people that know you
yourself, and based off of your work ethic, based off of your success.
Yeah, I think a lot of 11th house can get that whole like fame and infamy thing confused in the sense of like, to them it's all the same, if that makes sense.
Someone has something interesting when it comes to stelliums. Are these energies that we died and didn't let go of in our past, or is it something we have to push harder towards?
Wait, what is this asking about?
In terms of when it comes to stelliums. And I actually had a past life reading about this time last year, June of last year. And it gave me a lot of insight on why I am the way that I am now. And it was, I had a really strong relationship with my brother, and I was just basically like the cool aunt my whole life. And so I didn't like have my own family and my own like marriage or relationship or anything like that. And I was just like the aunt. And that really translates into this emphasis in my chart as a 7th house, 4th house person, Cancer rising and all of that, of like searching to finally fulfill that in myself, finally be able to have my own family and that stuff. So that is, I mean, I think it can be both. It depends. And we were actually doing a reading for a client who had Sun square North Node and South Node. And Sun square North Node and South Node is an indication of like you ignored the lessons that you had to learn in your past life. And now they just become inescapable and a huge focus in your life. And they become all the more difficult because you didn't satisfy them in a past life.
Let's see. Oh, somebody, I remember there was a question. Where is it? How would you interpret an intercepted stellium? And somebody also asked about, quickly, how do I phrase it? Like, let's say, okay, like the Venus transit in Taurus, I have an intercepted Taurus. Does that mean that that transit feels intercepted? And the answer is yes. So like, if you have an interception natally and that is what's in the sky right now, it's going to probably feel a little bit like you're having trouble getting to that energy right now. Like that'll be very clear, I think, in like, whenever Mars is being intercepted in your interception, then you're going to feel really like powerless and frustrated kind of situation.
Yeah, I feel that hugely when the sun is intercepted in my chart, or when Venus is intercepted in my chart.
Yeah, I feel Venus
in my chart. I'm just like, my confidence goes down like several times. And same with Venus, but like when Venus is intercepted in my chart, I'm like, oh my God, I'm fat.
I'm always like, I'm so ugly. Yes, I'm always like, I'm so ugly no matter what I do. I look terrible.
That's where it helps to know like,
yeah,
that's not true.
It's Venus being intercepted, yeah.
Here's a hot button question as well. What house system is the best one? I've heard some people say the whole sign system was the best. Shaina, take it away.
Well, just like if you heard our rant about not rant, it wasn't like angry, but if you heard us talking about Vedic astrology versus Western tropical, it's kind of like the same thing applies there, where it's like everybody likes what they like and everybody connects with what they connect with. But we use the Placidus system, and we really only like, I guess, or think it's the best because it has interceptions, because it's the only house system that honors interceptions and doesn't keep, or like and honors the actual degrees of each house, because we think that makes a huge difference. And I think that if you have an interception and then you learn about your interception, that's probably a lot of the reason why you connect with astrology, honestly, because it's so hard to explain through any other words. So then for a house system to take that away, it's like, but wait, that but I feel like it's like you're too connected with it. At least I felt like I was.
Yeah, and not that I drive or anything, but I find that like learning the Placidus system or learning astrology with the Placidus system is like learning to drive stick shift first.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's harder
Comprehend.
to interpret the natal chart through the Placidus system, and once you know that, it becomes like a piece of cake to interpret the whole sign system or the equal house system.
Mm-hmm. Any advice? Oh, sorry. Did you want to?
No, I got lost in the chat again.
Okay. Any advice for someone with an unaspected north node? So, yeah, because I think that with an unaspected north and south node, I think the main thing that you feel is just an aimlessness, or just a general, like you don't have a push for or against whatever you feel, whatever your life karma is. And so you might also just feel like just disconnected to your body, disconnected to your wants, disconnected to living kind of situation, because you don't feel like nothing's pushing you, propelling you to really go a certain way. And so I think that you really need to pay attention to the house and the sign that it's in, because it still is prevalent, and really push yourself to get there. And you might have to kind of inorganically come up with the motivation, if that makes sense. But there's still stuff to learn. And I think that if you found astrology with an unaspected north and south node, it'll help, because then you can also just kind of point out I don't know, maybe I'm coming at this from the wrong way, but there's always stuff to be working on. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't really paying attention to your answer, so I don't know if I'm repeating anything of what you just said, but it's a lot easier to ignore your north node when it's unaspected, because no one likes their north node, and at least if it's aspected to something else, especially positively, especially a conjunction to a personal planet, it's a lot easier to tackle. So it takes a lot more awareness and consciousness to move into your discomfort zone when your north node is unaspected. But the unaspected thing, I think Alyssa Trahan said this, that it's like having a brunette in a group of blondes. She's either going to, or that unaspected planet is either going to fade away into the background or be that center of like the only brunette in the group of blondes, you know? Speaking of Alyssa Trahan, here's a question for you, Shaina. Alyssa Trahan said Capricorns are the comedians of the zodiac. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, super biased. I'm super duper biased. This isn't factually held, but I absolutely think that they are. And I will always find a lot of humor in Capricorn moons.
Where do y'all Where do you all accept chart readings or synastry, and what do you charge if so? You can go to partytrickastrology.com/shop for birth chart readings, transit readings, and progress chart readings. We don't do synastry or compatibility readings. We recommend Jewel Mayberry for that.
Somebody, I don't really have a very long answer for this, but somebody asks any advice for a lot of Chiron aspects in the chart. I think that I'm pretty sure me and Nina both have quite a hefty amount of Chiron aspects, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that a lot of it is just like exposure, putting yourself out there, being willing to kind of fail and be embarrassed, and really, because I feel like this might be biased towards how I feel like I've experienced my Chiron, but I feel like it points to a lot of embarrassment, and especially the harsher aspects, like the positive aspects to Chiron, I think, are the embarrassments that helped you grow, that you're not really holding as harshly. But I think the negative is where it still really hurts, where it's still really sensitive. That stuff where it's like, if somebody makes a joke about it, you're not just able to laugh it off. And so I think a lot of kind of getting through that stuff is, again, like just through like, I guess, like exposure therapy, which it might not be perfect for anybody, but that's just the advice that I found for myself.
Chiron prominent in the chart, which it is for me, is just like, how hurt are you?
Yeah.
And how, but also you can obviously highly emphasize the wounded part of Chiron, but Chiron is the wounded healer. So you can also emphasize the healer part of that. And of course, it still sucks to be a wounded healer, but you can find a lot of satisfaction and purpose through the healing part of Chiron and being a healer. Does your seventh house have to do with the person you attract and their moon sign, i.e. Sagittarius is in my seventh house and my boyfriend has a Sagittarius moon? Well, the seventh house just has to do with what energies you're attracted to in general. If you have an empty seventh house and all you have is Sagittarius, you're bound to attract someone with a Sagittarius something. Is Sagittarius strong in your boyfriend's chart? Is he lunar dominant? That could be something.
Somebody said, what placements indicate skin issues? I would think that this would have to do with Venus and also the ascendant, because especially with like having like we always say, like having a Cancer ascendant will probably point to having acne at some point, especially if it's more badly aspected, because it's kind of like the craters of the moon. But also if you're looking at Venus, having Venus in a bad aspect to Saturn, having Venus in the sixth house that's badly aspected can indicate skin issues. And I think also like, if you have an intercepted sixth house or planets intercepted in the sixth house, I think that can indicate really poor hygiene, because when you have, especially if you have an intercepted sixth house with a planet in there, I think of this as the typical like teenage boy. And I knew like a teenage boy with this placement that just like never washes their face, right? And a lot of boys don't wash their face, but because he had that moon intercepted in the sixth house, it showed he never washed his face. Like he'd always have really bad acne, his bad skin. So I think that can indicate it due to like the laziness and the procrastination, but then the planet being in there being like, you're still gonna feel this, you know.
Yeah, actually for skin issues, you want to look at the cause for said skin issue. Acne, obviously, a lot of times is a hormonal thing or a diet or like a routine upkeep kind of thing. That's why Cancer rising is indicative of acne at some point, because like we said, the moon has to do with the reproductive organs, with hormones in that kind of way. So that could be, and again, the craters of the moon thing as well, in terms of like acne scars. Those can show up. And sixth house stuff as well, in terms of like that kind of upkeep and health, and depending on if you're a sixth house person, you can be more sensitive to how you treat your body and whether that's going to show up in your health or in your skin. Eczema, I know, is related to anger.
Oh, that makes sense.
Anger, or just being a really angry person. That's how eczema shows up on your body. And we actually had a client, and this was a couple of years ago, or maybe just a year ago at this point, a couple of years ago, who said that we talked a lot about his Mars when we did his reading. And he said that he had a lot of anger issues and that he had really bad eczema, and that by kind of working with his anger issues, he had less eczema. And that's something that I've always heard, is that eczema has to do with anger or pent up anger or stuff like that. So you want to look at whatever skin issue you're having and see what the root of that is, and then you can diagnose it through the birth chart.
Yeah, and that's not just true with skin issues. That's just true with like literally issues that you're having, period. Somebody, oh.
This is a really basic question. What years were you guys born in? We were both born in 1997, about a month apart.
Have you guys had any experience with karma, like Capricorn karma? Like if someone has wronged you, do you notice they get a lot of karma because of your heavy Capricorn influence? I missed you guys' class. Hope you're well. Oh, thank you. So I was thinking a lot, I'm taking this one because I was thinking a lot about Jupiter and Capricorn recently, because somebody posted a super duper accurate and informative comment on the Jupiter, I think in the 10th house video, what that could do is also this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but there's also people overstating your talents, like believing you could do anything, like them not seeing your like limitations and just saying like, if you put your mind to it, if you put in the hard work, literally anything is accomplishable. You're not allowed to say it's not. And then also that could be on the other side, somebody who if you're Jupiter in the Capricorn, Jupiter in 10th house, like you might have a family that overpraises you and that everything you do is fantastic, and then you go out and find out that it's really not. Or they can go the other way and be super duper critical of you, and so you think you're way worse than you actually are, because you're so used to being picked apart. And the reason why I was saying this is because I think I have major karma, and I always have, just in like even small terms, because of the Jupiter. My Jupiter's in Capricorn in the 7th house, which is very just and like righteous, I guess. And so I've always felt like, even before I knew astrology, like somebody's watching me, and if I slip up in the slightest or do something a bit immoral or against my standards, like I feel that shit so bad so fast, and the turnaround is like no other. Like if I do something wrong, then it's like the world's like, just kidding. And a lot of times it results in health issues, but anyways.
Yeah, but Nate also asked if other people wronging us get karma. And for me, I haven't really kept track of people wronging me. I know that I was like I had a glow up, right? I was really ugly and nerdy and weird when I was a kid, and I've always been quite awkward, and I was really bullied when I was a kid. And I remember like kind of feeling like, why am I so bullied, and why do these people get like everything? And I was kind of like picked on by my teacher, and other people would she would favor other people in my class, just because I was a really weird, awkward, and Aquarian kind of kid, right? And my teacher didn't really like me and made it quite clear. But I remember thinking like, why does everyone get favored and blah, 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 and all of this? But then I realized that like they are only acting out towards me because of their home life, because of their family
insecurities.
And I went to a Steiner school, obviously, so I knew these people for years and years and years and years. And I got to know like what was happening with them in their home lives. And not to say that my home life was like the perfect ideal thing, and that's why I was bullied in school, but I don't really think of like karma in that way. It's like usually when people wrong you, it's because they have an issue that they're dealing with themselves at the moment, and not that they need to like, obviously that's no excuse, but you gotta forgive.
Somebody said, what is a Steiner school?
Loaded question. A Steiner school, also known as a Waldorf school, is a form of education created by Rudolf Steiner in Austria. And it's just basically, just really, really simplify, I call it like an arts school, an arts-based school. And to the point of what I was saying, they're usually quite small. I graduated with 8 people my senior year, and probably the biggest my class ever was in like first grade, maybe like 25, 30 people. and you have the same class teacher from grades 1 through 8, if they make it that far. My teacher was fired after grade 7. And you get to know these people really well. Some of them from kindergarten through 12th grade, and you have all of your classes with them.
Somebody said, do you guys think that Lilith in the 11th house creates a person that doesn't fit in or just attracts toxic friendships? I've had quite a few. I think like 3 of my main like best friends kind of growing up throughout my life had Lilith in the 11th house. And I also just, like I said, I watched a documentary on the Unabomber, and he's a Lilith in the 11th house. So I've been thinking about this placement a lot. And I think it creates a definite like toxic feeling towards groups, very anti-establishment, very like doesn't fit in and doesn't want to. And I think that's what normally attracts me to these people. But then where it can kind of flip in the very like Lilith way is that Lilith will wind up getting hurt, and so Lilith is going to do like kind of whatever it can to make sure it doesn't. So as much as these people always say that they hate drama and they're so not interested in it, and like that's what attracts me to them, they're also the people that always kind of wind up being in it, always secretly like it, always secretly are starting it, and are just kind of undermining friends a lot, or just very untrustworthy for good reason, because a lot of friends and groups have broken their trust. Like this might be something where a friend like exposed something of yours a lot, or like puts you on blast, but could be very harmful and detrimental, or just in general, like this is a very culty position, somebody that maybe grew up in a cult or wants to be a leader of one or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of relationship between the mentality of cults and the 11th house.
Yeah,
which is super interesting. And definitely, and that's like the darker side of the 11th house. Not that the 11th house is an inherently dark house, but to have that dark energy of Lilith is really going to emphasize that. What type of person does a 12th house Venus attract?
anybody.
Well, no, a 12th house Venus, obviously the 12th house, or not obviously, but if you watched our 12th house video, the 12th house is the house of soulmates and hidden enemies. The 12th house rules prenatal life. So it's a lot of things that are hidden or taken away from reality, that don't live in the real world. A lot of times you see the association of 12th house Venus with someone who has a repressed, not sexuality, but sexual identity, someone who can't share publicly the type of people that they love. And so that sometimes means someone who who's in the closet, but sometimes that means someone who gets themselves in relationships with people that they can't be public with, who, get into relationships with their professors or marry men and stuff like that, because the 12th house also sees love as boundless, and that will sometimes not stop them from getting into relationships that society would not want them to. And the 12th house is very karmic. You can just feel that feeling of a relationship or a person that you just feel so soulfully connected to, and you can't stop that feeling, and you end up in relationships that for one reason or another need to be hidden. And this is a tangent, and I'm not saying that if you're 12th house Venus that you are this way, but I was reading an article that was comparing, I don't know how to say this name, Epstein?
Oh, Jeffrey Epstein?
Jeffrey Epstein was looking at his chart and the indications of him being a pedophile. And that was his either Venus or Mars or both in Pisces, because there's this feeling of that boundless society doesn't approve, but I'm still going to go after my passion or my love in that way. And that's a real twisted way to interpret Venus or Mars in Pisces. It's not inherent of everyone and anyone who has Venus and or Mars in Pisces. But then I got really into, because obviously we're in quarantine, there's so much time to just kill. I got really into the conspiracy theory of Tom Hanks being a pedophile. And I was like, oh, no, I don't believe this, whatever. But I'm just going to look up his chart to see if he has Venus or Mars in Pisces. And he has both. And I was like, whoa.
Damn.
And I don't believe necessarily that Tom Hanks is a pedophile, but there's some really, really convincing theories out there.
I'm interested now. I never put anybody out. I'm always questioning.
Like a billion times this live stream. We don't know anything.
Yeah, that's the end of the okay, because we're talking about 12th house. Somebody said, have you ever found a friend to be a hidden enemy and they had planets fall into your 12th house? Because I was just thinking, I just realized this the other day because I was at home in Vegas and I was walking around, and like I'm really close to where my elementary school, middle school were, so I wind up walking past there all the time. And going on my government mandated walks. And there was somebody that I knew in elementary school that I had a serious, like classic, like almost like astrological, like love-hate friendship relationship with, because she was a Gemini sun and she fell in my 12th house. And now that I know, she reflected all those qualities of the Gemini that would drive me absolutely crazy. Just being fake and mostly being fake nice to me. And then like kind of turning around and like always telling on me, being such a tattletale, being like a two-faced bitch, basically. And being like nice to me and my parents, especially. She'd be like really nice to my parents and they hated her. Anyways, and then I realized that this girl was born on the exact same day as this girl that I knew in high school that I had the exact same issue with. And her Gemini sun fell in the 12th house, and it was the same issue. They were totally different people, went about it in totally different ways. But it drove me crazy because I couldn't tell the whole time if we were friends or enemies, because they'd act nice in my face and then be two-faced behind my back. Now that won't always be true because you have to look at the planet you have to look at the sign that your 12th house is in. And because mine is Gemini and they're Gemini suns, that was the issue, is that they were being friends to my face, enemies behind my back. And so yeah, that was just definitely, those two can also be the same thing. Like was what I was trying to say, is that they can be your friend and your hidden enemy at the same time.
Yeah, I don't actually have any stories of like people that were my hidden enemies. Definitely people that I haven't liked that fall into my 12th house, and definitely people that I feel really connected to that have fallen into my 12th house. Here's a question for you.
I'm sorry, I want to specify. I do like Geminis a lot, and a lot of people that I know, a lot of other Geminis that fall into my 12th house, and I love that they fall into my 12th house. It was just interesting because they're both Gemini, Sun, Pisces, Moon, born on the same day, and I had the same issues with them.
Here's a question for you, Shaina, because you're an only child, and someone asked only child placements.
I think, I don't know. I think a lot of it, I think that I can only tell you, I guess, through my chart. Like if you look at your third house, like I have my third house in Leo, which I think can be a definite indication of being an only child, because it's like, was around your community, it's just you're the only child around. But then again, like you also have to know that like just because somebody's an only child doesn't mean they didn't grow up around people, or like they have like cousins that they're around. I think that fifth house stuff can indicate being an only child for sure. I think that having a fifth house sun would be what people would expect are the stereotypes of an only child. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a fifth house sun, you are an only child, or that you have to have one to be an only child. But I think that reflects the same nature. I don't know.
I think that like what I see the most in only child behavior, and I think you're totally right, that a fifth house sun is the stereotype of what people expect only children to be. But it's sharing.
Yeah.
And what else was it? Sharing and something along the lines of
introversion too. I think that most only childs wind up being more introverted.
Yeah, introversion and like compromising of like not being able to do what someone else wants to do versus what you want to do as the only child.
I've always attributed that to my autism though.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a little bit of both.
Because like it winds up, because like I had to, I don't know, because for me, that's always like a change of plans thing that I think that I have the issue with, because I'm autistic, not because because I had that issue. I don't know if that makes sense, because I had to be around people and I constantly had to like be compromising like that, but I was terrible at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think those are definitely things that you learn when you have siblings, when it's something like so simple as like what you're watching on TV or like stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it all boils down to like just you're used to running your life as an individual versus being around people. Because I have a lot of trouble adapting to like a person being around, period, and like doing things with that person. Because you're used to just like dealing with your own shit.
But in terms of astrology, what I see in your chart the most like that is your interception, your 11th house interception, and having your 11th house ruled by Aries.
Yeah, for sure.
Your Capricorn, Jupiter.
Yeah.
So might be only child placements. Another thing is, what about allergies in astrology? Is that just a Virgo rising thing? It's Virgo energy in general, 6th house, Virgo rising. Yeah. Your relationship to your allergies will be expressed in like what is in your 6th house.
I have horrible allergies. So does my dad. So does my aunt. And we all have Mercury in the 6th house. So I don't know. But I'm assuming that's like a mind connection to, that represents that anything that's going on mentally with us shows up physically. So I don't think that's specifically where that's coming from, I don't know how to explain it.
My brother is a Virgo rising with his sun in the 6th house. So,
yeah, my dad.
And he's always had like a deathly allergy to peanuts. And I know someone who has an allergy to all tree nuts, and he has Mars in the 6th house. And it's a very, like, I've known my brother my whole life, obviously, and he's always had an allergy to peanuts. But he doesn't have like as much, he doesn't like care as much, almost. He isn't like super worried about it all the time. Whereas this person that I know with Mars in the 6th house who has this allergy to tree nuts is always extremely worried of dying from nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, like even with another example is like my dad has his sun in the 6th house, and I also have Venus and Sagittarius in the 6th house, and they read really differently because my dad definitely worries about it and wants to be way more, like if I show the slightest bit of thing, he'll instantly give me medicine. But my Venus and Sagittarius is like, let me just write it out a bit longer. And I don't do that compared to anybody else in the world. But compared to my dad, I am so lackadaisical with that stuff, even though I'm not. But that can also show, just how you handle it, I think, just shows in the 6th house too. Go ahead.
About Lilith. And that's our next series whenever social distancing is over.
Yes. That is a series that we're planning on doing next. Let's see what we have in here. Somebody said what to focus on when getting into astrology. It's a bit confusing to navigate at times.
Well, like we said, we've very much focused on, well, I don't know how to answer this question. Like I was saying, that we very much focus on people versus transits and how they affect the world and worldly events and stuff like that. Like we do focus on that a little bit, but it's not our main focus. When I got into astrology, I just wanted to know about myself, and I wanted to know about the people around me. But if you're asking like what planets you should focus on, or like what in the birth chart you should focus on, start with like personal planets and rising, midheaven. I mean, I heard that this channel called Party Chick Astrology has a super long informative house series, and the houses are really, they're like the really important.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I think that if this is a question more like I'm wanting to learn the scope of astrology instead of like just getting into it and dabbling in it. Because I think in that sense, you'd want to look at personal planets, like if you're getting into it for yourself. And if you're wanting to get into it more in the grand scheme of things, I think that really understanding the energies, like having a full, complete grasp and understanding of each of the 12 signs and how they play out, then makes it so much easier. Because then if you understand that, and also understanding like their modality, their element, like all of those facts, then it makes everything else so much more easier to understand. Because then once you're learning the houses, you already have an up because you fully understand how the signs talk to each other. And same with aspects, and same with even the planets. Like if you just have the building block of the 12 signs, I think that that will greatly help you understand everything else.
Someone asked, do C-section births affect your chart? And the answer of that is not by virtue of that birth being a C-section birth, but most C-sections that are scheduled, and a lot of C-sections are scheduled, if you, as a mother, choose that you want to have a C-section, then it's scheduled, and they're usually scheduled for dawn, for like 5 a.m. And that's the time when your child will have a majority of their planets in the 12th house.
My this is just a silly story. My aunt was telling me about my cousin's births, and her first, they're both C-sections, but her first kid is a Scorpio rising with Pluto in the first house and Chiron in the first house and Mars in the 12th house. So, and she was telling me how painful the birth was. It was a last second C-section, and it was like she was like barely, it was just like very unhealthy, very chaotic. He almost died or something. Like it was very extreme. And then her second birth, who he's a Taurus rising with a Jupiter in the first house, it just popped right out. They planned the C-section. She planned a time. Well, she did decide to do the C-section, but she knew it was coming. It was all prepared. She went in, she went out. It was like painless. It was super quick, super easy, no problem. So more than anything, I think that the C-section it doesn't have to be a C-section, but the way the birth went really does affect the 12th house and the first house as well, is what I'm trying to say. What is the significance of midheaven versus IC? So like MC versus IC. We touched on this in our house series, but basically it's 10th house versus the 4th house. So it's your external appearance versus your in who you are and your internal and your roots in your home. So MC is considered like a second ascendant kind of. And I think that your IC is just something that you personally connect with. Like you feel like you have those traits and you kind of fully understand them.
And also depending on how much is going on in your IC, it will show to like what your family upbringing did to your psyche, your personality, character now, and what your home life was like.
Mm-hmm.
This is funny and has nothing to do with astrology, but someone asks, do you have some weird / creepy Los Angeles experiences that you can allude to?
This isn't very creepy, but this is just in my never-ending saga of the fact that I think that there is a ghost in my apartment or something in my apartment, which I've never thought that before. And I have my roommate who's very skeptical agreeing with me, because so this was a while ago, but we've had a lot of issues where we think it lives just outside this hallway for a lot of reasons, because the store is really weird. And the first time that I came in, the door closed and like turned in my hands and I didn't move it. And I just always feel like a weird chill, and I always feel like a lot of energy coming from over there, and I've like seen stuff. But just the other day, there's a light. And me and my roommate and our friend, we were watching TV, and both me and my roommate were like looking over in that area, and we watched the light turn on, and like nobody was around there, and both him and I both saw it like go from dark to turned on. So that's not I don't know. There's something in this place. That's all. But I think it's very friendly.
I lived in a notoriously, famously haunted building, and I didn't have any ghost experiences, but I lived with 3 other girls at the time. And 2 out of the 3 of them were always talking about all these ghost experiences that they had, but I'm pretty sure they were just lying because they were both
or over dramatizing.
those kinds of people.
Somebody said you can make the ghost go away, but I don't think I want to. I think this ghost is very friendly and been very respectful, and I think they just turned on the light because they were wanting a snack. And they needed the kitchen light on. They were enjoying the TV show. They wanted a quick munch.
What's your least favorite placement in others?
A moon squaring mine, probably.
No, not the industry and like another person.
I know. No, I don't know. I just like, I was gonna say definitely Cancer moon, and I was like maybe Libra moon, and I was like, well, Aries moon too. We'll throw it in because sometimes they can make
all moons that square you. Yeah.
No, I don't know. Aries moon definitely don't frustrate me as much.
I don't know. My instinct is to say 5th house sun, but
I was just about to say it. That was my instinct too. I'm trying to think if there's something more. I don't know. There's something that sometimes people will just tell me their sun, moon, and rising, and I can't tell you what it is, but in my head, I put together the combination, and I'm just like, this doesn't do anything. I think that when somebody's chart doesn't do anything, which I know you said a placement, but.
Someone said that Regina George in Mean Girls is a Leo, Aries moon, Scorpio rising. And my old boss from when I used to work at a restaurant is an Aries, Leo, Aries moon, Scorpio rising. And he was awful.
Yeah. Do you have an answer? Do you have something that you really don't like in other people's charts?
Well, like I said, 5th house sun, but I have people that I like that have 5th house suns. So
for sure. It's not like, yeah.
Do you guys think that some things in astrology can be associated with certain parts of the world? I think it's called map astrology. I think you're thinking about astrocartography. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. When you guys do readings, do you mention aspects? Absolutely.
Yeah. Somebody asked, I think, also if we're doing, if our birth chart readings are up, and they are. I'm pretty sure they're in stock. Definitely our drag me's are in stock.
Yeah, our drag me's are in stock. I think we have advanced in stock. I don't think we have any more beginners in stock.
I don't think so. Okay, that's kind of all of them.
Pluto in the 6th house, is that worse for allergies? Or Pluto in the 6th house, the biggest party trick that I found for this is that every single person that I know with Pluto in the 6th house had a career plan and then had to switch careers because of a dramatic health situation.
Yeah. Why don't you like 5th house sun?
Okay, so like a lot of people mention in our less than overwhelmingly positive videos, we talk about people that we have experience with these placements. And people can tell that, you know?
We're not trying to hide it, really.
It's only field research, really.
Yeah, that's kind of our videos. That's the whole point.
I'm always doing field research with every person I come in contact with.
Yeah.
And 5th house suns, by and large, first of all, there's a clash with me being an Aquarius and 5th house sun being Leo energy, and that's kind of an opposition. I find these people need a lot of, they think the world revolves around them. They kind of grew up, and this is like in a bad example, you know, the negative side of it. They grew up with their parents telling them that everything they did was absolutely right and perfect. And so a lot of times when 5th house suns do things that are not okay, that are wrong and hurtful and mean and disrespectful, they won't own up to that, which is super frustrating. They will say that it's your fault for being whatever way, and essentially are really hard to communicate with, are really hard to like say, hey, you made me feel this way, because they're so not willing to hear that they're anything less than perfect.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with everything Nina said. And to add on to it also, from a person, I have an intercepted 5th house, and my Chiron's in there, and I have Saturn in the 10th house. I was never the favorite, ever, 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 ever. And I refused to be a kiss ass, and I was super against it. And 5th house sons are the favorites. 5th house sons are the kiss asses. 5th house sons are the safe, like if you're an actor, they're the safe option. They're the option that like, it, for some reason, having a 5th house son like dilutes their personality, which in my opinion, and it doesn't actually do that, but to me, I see it diluting their personality because they associate so heavily with what they like, that they fit into society so well, and they don't go outside they don't think outside the box a lot, I found, and they do what they think will get them the most praise, and like kneel down to what groups and like the audience wants a lot. And I find that they think that they're very creative, but in reality they're just copying everything that they've already seen. Like if this person likes a movie, then they like become that movie, and they think that's creative, when in reality that's just completely copying. And also these are people that I think like they just kind of, like Nina said, like they've just always been a favorite, and they're easy to pick out, and they make the safe choices, and I just find that they get way more praise than they deserve. And I'm a Capricorn, so I get mad at that. And I actually knew somebody who was a 5th house Capricorn sun, and she definitely didn't get it as easy as kind of what we're talking about. She definitely didn't get that endless praise from her parents and all that stuff, but she definitely was a favorite, and she had to work for it a lot more than most 5th house suns did, but she still didn't understand how much she was liked and how easy she had it, because she had that Capricorn that was like, well, I'm working for it, but the 5th house is like, yeah, but you also always get it, if that makes sense. Like 5th house sons will be like, I didn't get this role, this is completely unfair. And it's like, bitch, that's life. Sometimes you don't get what you deserve, and like they won't accept that because they've never experienced that before. So that's my long rant.
Yeah, or that they can't accept that they are not deserving about absolutely everything in the world just by virtue of them being who they are.
Or just by them being like baseline talented. Like a lot of 5th house sons are baseline talented, you know? And they think that but they never can quite reach above and beyond. I don't know. I'm being mean, but.
We went to a performing arts school, and there was a lot of that. There was a lot of like, I'm going to go up to the director of the school and say, why did you give me this role? I deserve to be a lead. Why was I not put in an advanced vocal production and I was put into advanced voice and speech? Blah, blah, blah. Why did you do this to me?
Everything's a personal attack, yeah.
Yeah. But placements indicate psychopathy. This is interesting because obviously you think of like psychopaths and you think of murderers and all of that, but a really good example of a psychopath that isn't like a movie villain, serial killer is, oh, what the fuck is his name? Fire Festival guy.
Oh, I mean to watch that.
What's his name?
I don't know.
Billy. I feel like his name is Billy. So Billy from Fire Festival. And funny that it's called Fire Festival because a super concentration of a lot of fire sign energy is basically a recipe for psychopathy. That feeling of being invincible, big risk taking, and feeling like you're the center of the universe and no one can touch you. That's like way too much. And he was
also selfishness.
Yeah, selfishness. And he was a con artist.
Yeah, not seeing what they're doing is wrong and very impulsive.
Wrong, feeling like they don't really need to work for anything and everything's going to be all right in the end. That was very Billy from Fire Festival. And that's an illustration of like, he didn't care that he was conning these people. He was just doing everything in his own self-interest. So that's, if you want to look at that guy, I wish I knew his name, Billy from Fire Festival. if you want to watch that documentary, there's 2 documentaries actually. Watch one of those documentaries, whether you have Netflix or Hulu, and look at his chart. That's a good example of psychopathy. That's not like Ted Bundy. And Ted Bundy obviously is a psychopath. And he's got a super Sagittarius stellium.
Oh yeah, he
I'm not
does.
saying that all Sagittariuses are psychopaths, but that energy can manifest into the same criteria that makes a psychopath.
Somebody said, do you guys find that you encounter similar energies in the people who come into your life? I'm always running into Cancers, Gemini, and Taurus type people, like literally any roommates I ever had. Yes. Yeah, everybody, like, I find so many people that I like have Capricorn moons, Taurus sun, Capricorn moon, or switched combination. A lot of 7th house people, like a lot of people that I like have the same, that they're, what is that? Their east side of their chart, it's like an east dominant, right? Is that the right way? Am I saying it right? No, what's this half?
You mean west.
West, okay, because it's backwards, right? To me.
The ascendant is on the eastern.
Okay. Right. So on the west side of their chart. I think it's absolutely true. I especially if you have a loaded 7th house, you're going to attract more of the same people. I attract insane amounts of similarities.
Yeah, me too. And actually I have a group of friends that we all met on the Aquarius new moon of this year. And we all have strong Aquarius energy, which is super cool. Like Aquarius suns, Aquarius moons.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I don't have any water in my chart. What does that mean? Well, first of all, if you don't have any water in your planetary placements, you might have a lot of water in the sense of your house placements, maybe strong aspects to watery planets. So or if you have an interception, you have double water. So you do have stuff that could possibly make up for a lack of water, but I definitely have a lack of water in your chart. And it just means that just kind of like not being very connected to your feelings, not being a very emotional person, not that you don't have them, but just that you're not ruled by that nature. And I think that with what you have, what you're lacking in element, you should really look at what you have strong of, because that's what's going to take its place. And if that makes sense, like if you're somebody lacking in water, but you have a lot of fire, then you may be a little emotionally cold in pursuit of your own interests or wants. Or if you are lacking water, but like I have a lot of earth, so I'll put emotions down for the sake of reason in my head, you know?
I keep on getting lost in the chat.
Yeah, and for lack of water, also that can, I find, literally show on your skin. Like I have literally extremely, extremely dry skin and always have. And I think that's literally just because I have a lack of water in my chart.
What placements can point to someone always being in a relationship? South Node in the 7th house?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Moon or Venus in the 7th house. Again, that's not like always going to be true, because like I have Moon in 7th house, Nina has Venus in 7th house. We've gone through parts of our life being single, but that can be a definite indicator.
Yeah, and also you want to look at the nature of the signs, because obviously when you have Capricorn ruling your 7th house, it's going to take you a while to get into a relationship.
For sure. Like, what else would indicate? Oh, or even being like Venus in the 10th house, you feel an obligation to always be in one, just so that just to keep up appearances, you know? Or 11th house Moon and Venus just get lonely a lot. Like I know somebody with an 11th house Venus in Virgo, and I think that she's only in a relationship because she just gets lonely and would rather have somebody being around. You know what I mean?
What about middle child placements?
Oh, I think Sun in the 7th house. I mean, I'm not a middle child, but I think that can, or intercepted Sun, intercepted Sun majorly, 12th house Sun. Let me see. my
How do Libras and Aquariuses get along if they seem so different? Well, they're both air signs. I don't know what I guess you're thinking of Libras and Aquarius is different as like Aquarius beats to their own drum. Libras always looking for cues from other people as to how to behave. But both air signs, both really interested in people, both really like conversation, and a little bit of gossip maybe too. Both really people-oriented signs, humanity-oriented signs, like conversation. They're both mentally stimulating to each other. And again, like Aquarius it can have problems with like clashing with other people's personalities and other people clashing with Aquarius because it's quite a strong personality. And Libra is really accepting and open-minded and sees the best in everyone. So great combination.
And I think that there also is something in Libra and Aquarius differently done, that they like fitting in and they want to feel like they fit in. And Libras and Aquariuses, when they get together, are able to find common ground with each other very easily. So that in that way you can fit in with each other easily, because you can reason, and you want to kind of get on you want to try and find a meeting point. I don't know, like, yeah. Oh, I lost my place. Damn it. Hey guys, I've noticed that a lot of vegans I know are very 7th house dominant. I know anyone can be vegan, but it's definitely something I've noticed. I completely agree.
6th house dominant. She said 6th house dominant.
Oh no, what did I say?
It's 7th house.
Oh, I meant to say 6th house, and I was thinking 6th house.
Yeah, I mean, very natural. 6th house is Virgo, and that's both health and service.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to veganism, it's threefold. It is better for your health. It is for the empathy and care of animals that shouldn't be exploited and killed. And it is also better for the environment. And the 6th house is all about health and service, which is what veganism is a lot about.
And the 6th house also rules small animals, pets, and farm animals. So you're just gonna, if you have a lot more planets, unless it's a lot of malefic energies, you're probably gonna find more of a liking to small animals and pets and farm animals. And so you're gonna care more.
Where in a chart indicate that finding a relationship is hard for you? That would be Capricorn mixed with any relationship.
Saturn-y, Capricorn-y things, any influence on anything that it could be, whether it's on your Venus, on your 7th house.
Yeah, as well as Aquarius for a different reason, just for like not wanting to lose your individuality.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask, can you be able to predict what your children might be like? Also, will you be able to better raise them on their chart, since charts tell you how they were brought up? Yes and yes. 5th house is where you'll see indications of what your children will be like or how they will affect your life. I've also heard that the first child is the mother's child and the second child is the father's child, meaning that the first child will be more a product of the mother's 5th house, and the second child will be more of a product of the father's 5th house. I don't know where 3rd and 4th and whatever children fall in that. And yes, if you are an astrologer and you have your children's birth charts, you will better be able to, something as simple as like guide them into the activities that you know they will likely enjoy, or know how to deal with their emotions because you have an insight on how their moon reacts to things, know how to deal with them in conflict. So yeah, anytime that you have someone's birth chart, you know how to better interact with them overall. So if you have your children's birth chart, great, you know how to better interact with them.
Yeah, and better know how to parent them and understand them. And I think that like, even with like, you know, we only know personal experience. So it's like, if I feel like if my parents knew my birth chart growing up, they would have understood my emotional reaction to things a lot better, because it's hard to explain stuff like that in words. And I feel like most kids would feel that way most people would feel that way if they understood. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How signs survive quarantine? If we weren't quarantining, we could do a skit on that.
That's funny.
I have all signs in my chart except Libra. What could this mean? Well, that's impossible. Because if you didn't have Libra, then you wouldn't have Aries. And if you don't have an interception, then you do have Libra somewhere. It's ruling a house. I think younger kids have Cancer moons. Possibly. Pisces moon is also favorite child energy.
But I feel like Cancer moon can also be the youngest, because it's kind of like the baby of the family. So
Yeah,
you're like, yeah.
But youngest kids get bullied by their older siblings.
For sure. I agree. But that doesn't mean like, I don't think that would.
The parents don't like protect them from that, or like make them feel like the victim for being bullied. That's true.
Yeah, I don't think that would take away from the possibility of them, because I feel like a part of being a Cancer moon is honestly feeling like you're being bullied.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, are there any aspects in your charts that explain why you two get along so well, / went into business together? Well, we're really similar, our charts. Well, I wouldn't say really similar. We have a lot of differences, but we're seventh house dominant.
Similar concentrations, you know?
Yeah, we have similar concentrations. We're seventh house people, we're Cancer risings. As far as why we went into business together, we both have the same 10th house. We both have Pisces midheavens with Saturn in the 10th.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest indication, honestly.
Yeah.
And like why we did it together is because like if you look at our like synastry composite and stuff, we have stuff in the 7th house. We got some suns, moons going on in there. So we like doing things together. And then we just, like Nina said, we have the same 10th house. I mean, hers is intercepted and mine isn't, but it's both in Pisces with Saturn and Aries in there. So naturally we just work well together because we have the same approach practically.
Yeah, and Shaina's North Node is in Libra, meaning that she needs to learn how to work with other people. So I am part of her destiny.
Yes.
What Mars signs would you go into battle with? None. I am a Mars in Libra. I do not battle.
I was like, I don't know. What about debate? What Mars signs would I go into debate with? I would probably pick all fire signs so I could stay back and strategize.
Oh, go into battle with? I was thinking about like battling against.
Oh.
Yeah, no, battle's not for me. Thank you.
Yeah, no. This is random, but I've been around a Mars and Gemini, and I've been around somebody who's been involved, like around another Mars and Gemini, and the way they twist words is insane. And this is because you might talk about battling, and there've been a lot of debates with Mars and Geminis that have been around recently, and it's just like, where I know we got a lot of hate on a Mars and Gemini video, but I've been feeling that anger that we felt that day recently of like, where are y'all coming from? Like, why can't you hear me and not twist what I'm goddamn saying? Like, I'm speaking so clearly. She's speaking so clearly. Like, I had one of them, like, try to argue with my argument with just saying exactly what I'm mad at them for and using that as an argument against me. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you switch it like that? Anyway.
I think that with us having air sign Marses in the 4th house, what I at least need to remember a lot is taking my Mars out of the 4th house for arguments with other air sign Marses.
For sure.
And that's difficult when, in the case of what you're talking about, they have a lot of water energy. And so they're not coming out of their...
Yeah, that's true. They both do. Both of the ones I'm talking about have a lot of water energy.
But in the case of Mars and Gemini in itself as just like an air energy, I mean, they're little shit starters. You just gotta...
Right.
You know?
I can totally take an argument lighthearted, and I think that's what happens is like Mars and Gemini mixed with a bunch of water. Yeah. It'll like make something that's lighthearted a lot more serious. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's always water. It all comes back to the issue's water here.
Oh my God, look at this comment. I'm deaf and I can understand them word for word because they speak so clearly. Thank you for your clear speech.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Miss Maley. We went to performing arts school, so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe Mercury and Capricorn has something to do with it.
Somebody said Saturn in the 5th equals ugly child? Possibly. Possibly. Not for sure, but maybe.
If you have Saturn in the 5th, that doesn't mean that your kid's going to be ugly.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just means you're going to be boring and dull. I'm kidding.
I heard that 22 degrees in your chart indicates that you are likely to be murdered. Is this true at all? If you click on stuff on Astro Theme all the time, it will see like they will have like such brutal interpretations for each degree of each sign.
Oh yeah, I never read those.
No, remember I was reading one to you for
like, you were. Yes.
And I think it also said like that I was going to be murdered or something like that.
It was very dramatic. It was very funny.
I don't know. I would need to have some field research done on that.
Somebody said indication of psychic abilities, water. You know, 8th house, 12th house stuff, Neptune contacts, sometimes in a certain way, Pluto contacts, having a lot of Pisces, Scorpio, or Cancer energy, especially being, well, I guess anything, like rising would interpret as an intuitive psychic ability, whereas moon would interpret more of a emotional psychic ability. But especially having like Neptune, maybe Uranus, definitely Pluto in like the 8th or 12th house, or the moon in there too.
Are you guys prepping for your Saturn return? LOL. We're in the middle of our Saturn square.
I've done nothing but my entire life with prep for my Saturn return.
Yeah.
When you're Saturn in the 10th house, you're like, every day's a Saturn return.
But we're also nowhere near our Saturn return.
Yeah, no. I feel like, I don't know, everything's moving so fast.
Yeah, who knows? Like tomorrow will be like, oh my God, it's my Saturn return.
Somebody said, are Cancer moons more psychic than Pisces moons? I mean, there's not a way to say that yes or no, but I mean, Pisces moons kind of always win. Like that's the psychic sign. You know?
Yeah, and Cancer has a different kind of, it's different kinds of psychic.
Different kind of thing, yeah.
How do you ladies feel about the elitism that occurs in the Astro community? I didn't know there was any.
I don't know if I necessarily, well, I made a video like probably well over a year ago now about complaining about the astrological community, but I never posted it to my personal channel. But right. I never posted it because I got nervous and I just felt like I didn't need to put hate out there for no reason. I don't know, because I do definitely, I don't know if it's like the elitism that I'm mostly saying, but it's more of like the vibe that is obligated if you're in the spiritual or astro community. Does that make sense?
I feel like that the more that we do this channel and have our business, the more out of touch I've become with the astrological community, which is kind of a weird thing to have happened, but I just like find
very Aquarius of you.
I don't want my thoughts or like what I share to be all that influenced from, so I watch very few people.
Me too, yeah. I also just like very few people, I found, honestly. And somebody mentioned like what are our favorite astrologers a while ago, and there's somebody that I've loved her for so long, and I mentioned her before, but now I'm really wanting a chart reading from her. And she's one of the few that I watch all of her content from practically, but her name's like Honey Trap, like Dr. Honey Trap or something on YouTube. But I think she's awesome, and she makes a lot of really good kind of one-off videos, if that makes sense. Like, oh, she's talking about her Saturn return, or now she's talking about moon in the 12th house from a moon in the 12th house, or no, sun in the 12th house, you know, just like very specific, nice videos that aren't everywhere. And I think that she comes from a similar angle that me and Nina come from astrology towards, which is a very like personality based angle, very like applying it to real life. She uses a lot of real life situations, and like she does the same thing with like field research, just being like her friends. So I like a lot of her stuff. Plus I think she's fun. She's a Capricorn moon, so of course I like her.
Yeah. And less like series and more one-off, which sometimes is beneficial, because obviously when we make a series, not every one of our subscribers watches every single video of the
For
series,
sure.
because they want to watch their own placement. This isn't astrology, but why don't you do any more one-person shows?
Me?
Well, your one-person show is online, mine isn't.
Mm-hmm. Because that was a school assignment. I don't know. I have something that I want to post, but I can't because I used it for an audition, so I can't until that's cleared. Like until like I'm sure if I'm using it or not.
Saturn in the 5th means that you might not have any kids or trouble having them, right? Right, because Saturn is restriction. It sometimes also indicates not wanting to have kids.
What was the question?
Saturn in the 5th means that you might not have any kids or have trouble having them.
Somebody asked about, somebody earlier was like, I have an intercepted 5th house. Does that mean I'm not going to have kids? And it doesn't necessarily mean anything like that. I have an intercepted 5th house, and I've never wanted to be pregnant or have my own kid, which I think that's what it points to. But that doesn't mean that. I think it also points to fertility issues, so you might have trouble having a kid, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to for sure at all.
Yeah, you're going to want to look at your progress chart for when it becomes sun intercepted.
Yeah.
Would you ever do a series on tarot? I don't think personally that I'm qualified on tarot on the same level that I'm qualified on astrology.
Yeah.
I have to say that I'm technically qualified in anything.
But I agree with what you're saying. Like, I'm not going to give tarot readings to anybody but my closest friends. But I have confidence enough in myself to give an astrology reading, obviously, because we do, but yeah.
Have you ever looked at your channel's chart based on when you started it? Was there any strategy involved? There was zero strategy involved.
You think that there would have been, but there wasn't, which is very Pisces midheaven of us. But I don't know the time that our channel was made, but we are a Gemini. I looked into it only recently, like very, I don't know why we never thought about it, but our channel is a Gemini sun. Duh, look at, there's two of us right here. Party trick, astrology, Leo moon.
Controversial.
So yeah. I don't remember. Oh, and I remember that we also have Mars opposite Saturn in our channel's birth chart. And when I saw that, I was like, we can't escape it, Nina. We can't escape it.
Both Mars opposite Saturn natally.
Yeah, and in all of obviously our synastry and composite charts, like it's everywhere. It's nowhere. That's what we found.
Are you guys still pursuing your acting careers? How's that going? Is Hollywood completely shut down now? We are. I am. And Hollywood is surprisingly not completely shut down. I've actually had an audition, a self-tape every week ever since the sun went into my 10th house, because there's a lot of quarantine content still. There's lots of quarantine commercials being cast for, and there's still even theatrical stuff being cast for at the moment, but it's all self-tapes, obviously.
Mm-hmm. I had I thought I had a question.
It can also mean abortion, Saturn in the 5th. I would relate more of that to Pluto, or like miscarriages with Pluto.
I think Saturn in the 5th house would more have a lot of trouble getting pregnant than get pregnant easy. Like Jupiter in the 5th house, I think could relate to abortions only if you're somebody who wants to get abortions, because I think you'd easily get pregnant. So not saying that Jupiter in the 5th house would get abortions, but you know what I'm saying. If you're somebody who doesn't want the kid and get pregnant a lot.
You could be quite fertile and maybe
There's an artist who, she has 2 sets of twins, and she's like, twins is even one of my family, I don't know what's going on. And I've always thought she was an Aquarius rising. And if that's true, then she would have her 5th house in Gemini and her Jupiter in Gemini in the 5th house.
Is Venus conjunct Jupiter good? It's both benefics, but here a lot of people are negative about it or think it's superficial or something. I have Jupiter conjunct Venus, both in the 7th house. So I have Jupiter in the 7th house as well. I think it is superficial. There's definitely like, I think where people, did I say superficial? I meant beneficial. There's definitely people who say, I see where you could hear it being superficial because it can have like a kind of boy crazy vibe or a crush crazy vibe, or oh my God, that video, if anybody watches Cody Ko when he did That's Cringe on Girl Defined, and they were like, I was obsessed with boys. It's kind of that energy.
Oh, it is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And also, I don't know, I think having Jupiter conjunct, I mean, even a malefic can have its positives, because it usually can bring about a happy ending. Placements indicating a big inheritance. Normally you see inheritances in the 8th house, so that's where you would look, because normally inheritance comes from death, and 8th house rules death, so it'd probably be that. And I think that but your financial status growing up more comes from your 2nd house, but inheritance is more come from your 8th house, I think. And it could also be an inheritance from like a trial, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing, like just getting a big sum of money like that. But again, normally that comes from pain, and that's the 8th house too.
What do you think of Pluto conjunct Chiron in the 5th house can indicate? Shaina, you have this, don't you?
No, my Pluto isn't conjunct. No, it's not conjunct my Chiron, because it's 0 degrees Scorpio and my Pluto is 28 degrees Sagittarius.
Oh yeah.
So. But they're both in the 5th house. What was it? Jupiter or Pluto conjunct Chiron. That's just going to be very painful wounds, but also a great healing ability too. I think that Pluto and Chiron really kind of amp up a lot of the similar themes. So it also, you'd have to look at the sign that it's in for the kind of experiences. But in the 5th house, you probably just went through, it sounds silly, but like, well, it has also to do with childhood. So it probably a very bitter scar on your childhood, maybe because you didn't get to have one, you had to grow up fast, or at least for me, I felt like it was because I wasn't given a certain kind of knowledge that would have helped me a lot. And also just a lot of bad, I think, or negative like hookup experiences, or abusive like fun relationships, or like any relationship that's like fun or any crush that's cute always winds up being a lot more serious and toxic and hurtful. So you're probably pretty hesitant to like get involved with relationships, but also a huge ability to transform, a huge ability to heal yourself, and and creativity, as much as it's like very scary to kind of show people the process, it's very healing for you after it's all said and done.
On the issue of horrible things, can I see how I might die in the 8th house? I have Mars and Scorpio in the 8th and Venus and Sagittarius in the 8th. You can, I mean, again, I'd have to do some like field research on the accuracy of the things that you read, in terms of like how to predict deaths based on the 8th house, because I have, unfortunately, in times of drunken readings, told people how they're going to die in the 8th house because they begged me to, and it was a big mistake. So I wouldn't advise looking up how you're going to die based on the 8th house, although you will find interpretations. And I could, and Mars and Venus in the 8th house is a really obvious like connection that I will not share.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm hesitant to go towards that. because of, yeah, but I've done it too. I've totally done it too. Somebody said, lol, how can you predict if someone is a top, bottom, or switch in their chart? So I think I've thought about this a lot. No, but I think I'm willing to go down the signs and say what I think. Is that, I don't know. Because Mars and what?
We've said before that like
before.
Venus in Virgo is the ultimate bottom.
Yeah, but they can be a top if necessary, because in reality they'll just do what the other person
wants,
what they feel like they need to do for the other person, but they'll want to be a bottom. Mars in Aries is definitely a top. Mars in Taurus is probably going to be a bottom because they can get a little lazy. Mars in Gemini is a switch. Mars in Cancer, it depends, whatever protects them. They might, like, I find like Mars and Cancers have like weird sensitive things, like I don't want to give a blowjob, you know.
Thank you, Nature Explorer, for the $4.99.
God. Oh, thank you. That is so sweet. That's a super cute little gift thing. I was gonna say hi because you were in our
course.
Where Mars and Leo.
Top.
Mars and Virgo. Mars and Libra, I think, is a switch.
Yeah.
Mars and Scorpio, probably a top. Mars and Sagittarius, a switch, whatever's fun. Capricorn, top. Aquarius, switch. Pisces,
bottom or switch.
Yeah. But that's just vague.
Do you guys believe in past lives? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. As much as, again, the final answer for everything, though, is we don't know anything, but I would say I believe in it.
Yeah, we don't know anything, but I believe in it.
Yeah.
Well, this live stream has been 2 hours long.
Yes.
So I think it's time that we wrap up so that I can eat.
Same. Yeah, I agree. So this was a fun time. Thank you guys for joining us. We had a lot of people on at all times, which is really sweet.
Yeah, lots of people commenting, so that's really great. Yeah, never know how to finish these things.
Yeah, well, again, so we have our Pisces video coming up on this upcoming Wednesday, and after that we don't have any more content pre-filmed, so we don't even know what we're gonna do. But if you don't hear from us, we're still doing birth chart readings. We are 100% still doing that.
Yes, and we'll be doing drag me's on this channel.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do in like a monthly Q&A or something now. Yeah, again, thank you for all your guys' lovely questions and interacting and stuff.
This is the first time that we've ever been live streaming from Zoom, so hopefully this wasn't a fail. I don't think it was a fail, but in terms of like signing out, this is a new
yeah.
So on that note, bye.
Bye, maybe right now.